Everybody, Coupons here from Pull On 2 with your Mythic Alleria positional guide for Phase 1. I'm going to break this up into 3 videos just to make it easier for me. This is going to be Phase 1 only. Let's talk about the positional changes for Mythic here. The Void Expulsion thing, which is the pool that gets baited on the ranged, that drops additional pools, will now target 4 players after the initial one that's baited on the ranged. This is up from 2 from Heroic. The Void Droplets, when they die and put the damage increase debuff on one of the entities, will now only go on one thing, and it only goes on the thing that's closest to it when it dies. So melee, you need to be cognizant to be out of those circles, make sure those things are dying right under the ads. And that these Silver Strike arrows clear all of the damage taken debuffs from the ads, and on Mythic it actually prevents further applications from the mini bosses. What this means is that you need to make sure the bosses, the mini boss is at 0 or 1% before you hit it with a Silver Strike arrow. Let's talk about the blobs, because the initial set of blobs is actually pretty important on Mythic. If you have 2 DKs, it's pretty optimal to have them assigned to the other ads that you're not starting on, so not Demiar, essentially. And what you want to do is have your 2 DKs grip the 2 ads that's assigned on the other 2 mini-bosses into Demiar to get Demiar's 6 stacks of the debuff immediately. And you'll actually want to hold pressing your cooldowns on pull until you get all 6 debuffs applied to the ads. As far as the Silver Strike arrows, remember what I said, that you don't want to hit the bosses when they're not at 0%, essentially. So there's kind of 2 different arrow sequences that you can do, depending on your raid DPS. If you have lower DPS, if you're just starting to prog on this boss, you can essentially miss the first 2 arrows, have the 3rd one go into Demiar, miss the 4th, and then the 5th arrow goes into Morium, and the 6th arrow set goes into Veralis. If you have higher raid DPS, or if you're progging this boss later in the tier with raid buffs and gear, essentially you're going to miss and then hit every other one. So miss Demiar, miss Morium, miss, and then Veralis. Obviously, you're going to have to make the call as a raid leader of which one you want to do. And this can actually change on the fly. If you happen to see, if you're starting with the lower DPS raid strat and you happen to see the ads are getting lower, you could just call for like the second arrow set to go and hit the boss, and trust your raiders that they'll hit it. So that's kind of the general flow of the blobs and the arrows. The rest of P1 is just positioning of baits and platform management at that point. So I'm going to kind of go over the general bait areas throughout Phase 1. There's going to be 4 total sets of kind of bait sets, and when I say a bait set, I'm including the obelisks, the ranged single bait that happens, and then the 4 random players that get targeted with the puddles. So that's kind of a bait set that I'm kind of defining here. And there's going to be 4 of them, and we're going to go in a clockwise fashion here. Essentially, it's going to be these 4 sections in P1. Notice how square is kind of clean. That has nothing to do with the rest of the fight. That's just how we're ending up with the bait areas here. So if you happen to have a ranged player over in square, putting a puddle in a very bad place, it's not the end of the world, but no one should be over there in the first place. And then obviously the center here, you really don't want to put any circles, if possible. It just makes the entire P1 much cleaner for the Silver Strike arrows to get in position, and etc. All right, let's go over general movement. So what you kind of want to do is have the ranged bait the obelisks ahead of where you want to go soak, or bait the soaks, essentially, or bait the puddles, rather. So you'll notice that range is kind of more towards triangle than they are towards Demiar here. And what they're going to do is bait the obelisk, and then run towards Demiar towards the outside. Melee is also going to get one, and they're going to essentially go opposite directions, so they're not pointing the lines at each other, which is kind of the goal here. And this way, ranged is in a perfect place to bait that initial ranged puddle. So that initial bait happens, and ranged can move out at this point, and essentially be wherever until the next bait happens. But the 4 random people get targeted with the puddle drops after that, and they're going to just take those towards the outside to plant and drop their puddles. Now, when Demiar, and this is going to be a raid lead call and raid DPS call as well, when Demiar gets to about 20%, maybe lower, you can actually ship your melee over to the next mini boss and have your range DPS finish off Demiar here. And that's going to be a call on you and your raid team, whatever works for you for timing and to maximize essentially uptime and damage, right? But whenever you choose to move, you will move into your next bait positions here, which is kind of that second set, and you're doing the exact same thing again. So you'll notice that there's a gap, kind of where triangle is, that ranged is trying to bait the obelisks to move back to plant and get ready for the ranged bait. Again, you want to try to point your obelisks away from your other team if possible. And then again, ranged is in a perfect position here to bait their soaks or bait their puddles. And then the 4 other random soaks come out, and you're going to run those out and place them in a similar place. So again, at this point, it's going to be a raid call and when you're going to flip-flop your melee DPS to the last add. But essentially, you're going to start moving to get into the 3rd bait position, which is going to be over in the X slice. What you can do is gate here to make it easier for your range to get in position, because this particular set comes out a little bit faster. But you don't have to. You can just use movement CDs or even just run there. As long as you get into a good position to bait the next obelisk set, right? So again, you're doing the same thing. The obelisks come out, trying to point the lines away from your team and being in a good spot to bait the initial ranged puddle and eventual 4 puddles that go out. And it's pretty simple. You go into the next spot. Ranged is leaving a gap in between the previous puddles and themselves for the obelisk to move. And again, baiting. And hopefully killing the boss around this time with arrows. And phase 1 actually ends when all 3 bosses get to 0 HP and all 3 bosses are hit with an arrow. So that is P1. Look out for the P2 video. Thank you, everybody. Take it easy.